Good morning, Lauren and Vicki.
Good morning.
It is
Hello there.
so good to see you. And I just think this is so fun. Like we get introduced to people on WordPress, and then this is like the extra candy. I'll say that because we just had
Ooh.
Halloween. On top when we get to actually
Right.
speak with you, which is so fun.
It's great to see you guys.
Good to see you. So, you
Our
know,
pleasure.
as I said, we know you from WordPress, where you publish your
hmm
beautiful poems and pictures and posts. But you're a widely published author. Can you tell us about your writing journey?
Well, my writing journey actually began with a teenage girl who wore her brown hair long and straight and parted in the middle. That's when I started writing poetry.
Mm.
hmm
And I remember back then I used a lot of rhymes. Um, I wrote about family, friendships, boy crushes,
hmm
Oh,
But I wrote poetry throughout the years. And my poems turn out to be a destination for my emotions,
hmm
whatever I was going through, whatever I was feeling.
beautiful.
hmm
Then in my late 20s, I met my future husband. We were married. We will soon celebrate our 36th
Mm.
anniversary. And then we had our
Yay.
second daughter. And I continued to write throughout the years, but honestly, writing turned out to land on the back burner.
hmm
So I didn't really give it the time and attention that it deserved and required until
hmm
later in my life.
hmm
And ironically, when I turned the big 50, my son, who was in high school, suggested that I start a poetry blog. And
Oh,
Hmm.
that's how I entered the world of WordPress.
wow. Now, how did he
Yeah.
know about the WordPress? I mean, was
Yeah.
that?
My son is the techie in the family. He
Mm.
Ah.
was familiar with blogging.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's what I did. I started my poetry blog. I've been blogging for probably almost 14 years.
hmm
Wow.
And, but I will say, I just want to add a side note that, after high school graduation, I started going to college, but I didn't
hmm
finish for personal reasons. So I've never taken any
Mm.
formal creative writing courses or poetry classes.
Mhm,
hmm
And the fact that I didn't have any specific literary credentials
mhm.
kind of affected my self-esteem over the years.
Yeah.
Sure.
But when I started blogging and following the writers, who I
hmm
enjoy their poetry,
hmm
the online community became a fantastic online
Mm,
class.
mhm.
Yeah.
So that's where I learned many, many forms of poetry.
Yep.
I learned more about fiction. I'm not a fiction writer, but I ended up writing some fiction short stories. So the blogging community has just been a great community to be a part of.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's such
Lauren,
a
would you say it's it for Wynn and I have talked about this a little bit. It almost seems to a person, the writers that we talk about the importance of community and confidence building. And I love how, honest you're being about that trepidation I think that
Mhm.
writers feel because some of our favorite writers, Wynn and I, come to writing from the great big world of work. Not everyone has
Yeah.
literary credentials, and sometimes because they don't, the writing is more compelling. But there is a little bit of, I don't know, you have to feel a little bit of audacity, to
Mhm.
creep in and say, this is me.
Hmm.
I'm going to bring it to you and showcase it in a forum like WordPress. And I love hearing that you felt that, but the confidence comes when you meet friends that
Hmm.
receive you well and give great feedback. That's beautiful.
And I look at my writing years ago and I look at my writing now and it's changed, it's
Mhm.
Yeah.
transformed, it's evolved,
hmm
which is like Wynn said earlier, it's growth.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
So I write mainly in freestyle, but I do like the syllabic poetry, the
Mhm.
hmm
challenge that
hmm
that it delivers.
Mhm.
So I've learned, like I said before, I've learned a lot of poetry forms, and I've written some fiction short stories.
Mhm.
And one of them I had submitted to Spillwords, and it's called Resilience is Her Saving Grace. And it was
Mhm.
nominated for Publication of the Month.
Mhm.
It didn't win, but I was thrilled with the nomination because it was one of my first fiction stories
Right.
to be
Mm-hmm.
recognized in that way. So that felt good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And extending kind of your reach a little bit, because I think for writers that are as, um, I think, as accomplished as you are, really kind of reaching outside, of poetry to dabble, and we all think of it that
Mhm.
way, and then it
Right.
works out, and you feel competent when you do that, and it is growth. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So how
Well,
did your blogging journey sort of grow into publishing?
yes. I started self-publishing my books in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And my reason for that was I wanted to create a legacy or keepsake, if you will, for my family.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So in 2013, my first book was New Day, New Dreams.
Mhm.
And this is, I've always been a romantic.
Mhm.
And I'm lucky to say that I have a great husband. I have a great relationship. So that book takes the reader on a romantic ride. It's a
Mhm.
lot of love poems, kind of a fun, lighthearted book. Um, then in 2015, Finding a Balance was published, and that book, the poems in it express the emotions that I felt after a daunting disease invaded our family.
Mhm.
And there's also a little bit of romance in the book. It's kind of strange how I did that, but it's a little more serious. It has a little more serious tone.
Mhm.
And all the proceeds of that book go to the Chris Klug Foundation in support of organ donation
Mhm.
Oh,
because he
beautiful.
had the same disease. I mean, I'll be transparent. My daughter was diagnosed with this disease, and he had the same disease as her, and he's a survivor.
Mhm.
So it was very inspirational and hopeful for us
Mhm.
to read about him at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she's doing fine, just
Great.
letting you know.
Good.
But that was the story behind that book.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
then in 2021, I compiled a collection of poetry and nonfiction short stories from
Mhm.
my life and created a memoir that's
Mhm.
titled More Than Coffee: Memories in Verse and Prose.
Love
Mhm.
that.
And then my latest collection is Ever So Gently, and that's a poetry
Mhm.
collection of over about 90 poems.
Mhm.
So that is divided into three sections of nature, love, and life, and that's the Reader's Digest version.
That is so good. You know what I love? There are so many things that I love about your story and your journey. One is that creation of a legacy. We've heard this,
Yeah.
as people
Mm-hmm.
just, but the second is that you've mined what you've written. Like you pull these things
Yeah.
together.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's hard. I think for me, it's hard to to not just go forward. I like writing the next thing and I forget
Mm-hmm.
to mine stuff that
Right,
I've already put out there.
right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that makes me think that I need to organize everything that I've published on
Mm,
my blog and
Mm-hmm.
poems that I've submitted to other online magazines because
Mm-hmm.
there will be new books in the future, so I
mhm,
need to
Yeah.
do some organizing.
yeah. Well, speaking of new books, you have a new children's book you
Mm-hmm.
published for Gobbler's Mastigores. I'm just
Masticadoras.
Masticadores. Thank you, Lord. I knew I had just completely.
I
Um,
know.
and you have a children's book uh,
Yeah.
coming out shortly.
I do. I had written the story and shared it on my blog, I believe last year, and it was well received. And
Mhm.
I thought, I'm gonna put this into a book. So I did, and my nephew I have two older sisters. So
Mm.
my nephews and my niece are older, and um, he's a wonderful artist, and he's done
Oh,
the illustrations. And
Nice.
it's been a magical experience working with him and seeing the characters come to life through his artwork. So I hope to
oh.
publish that this month. I had planned to release it a few months ago, but we've had some technical difficulties.
Mm.
So I hope to have it come out this month, and I can market it for the holidays.
Oh my
I,
gosh,
I,
I
I
love
hope it
that.
does
Talk
well.
about, a family,
Mhm.
endeavor, right? And the fact that your nephew's the illustrator, that's just so
Yeah.
delightful. And that, to Wynn's point, it all started with a blog, right? And you're like, I think there's something more in this. So I'm curious, did you, in turning the inspiration in the blog into a book, did you have to write a lot more? What kind of additional effort was there to make that transition from a beautiful blog piece into a children's book?
I added a little more to it, and of course I edited, you know,
Hmm.
I wanted a certain amount of text on each page.
Mhm.
Children's books through my research are about 32 pages.
Mhm.
It's
Hmm.
going to be like an 8 by 8 square
Hmm.
paperback with a gloss cover. So I did some editing. I made some revisions, added a little bit more text to it, and I this is all new for me. I hope it does well, but
Yeah.
I told Chris, my nephew, you know, I had to lay it out what text I wanted, the order and everything on each page, and
Hmm.
then the picture in my mind that I envisioned
Yeah.
to align with the text. And I gave Chris my thoughts, and he delivered, and we went back and forth a few times. I was open to his suggestions.
Hmm.
He's very active on Instagram,
Hmm.
and he's in Southern California. So I appreciated any of his thoughts.
Yeah.
Um, my family turned out to be good editors too, and my son is helping me with the formatting. Uh,
Nice.
Full disclosure, formatting is not my forte.
Mm.
So
Hmm.
so I'm looking forward to seeing it in print, and I hope it does well. I mean, that's what any
Yeah.
author hopes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that you wrote the story, but you had the vision, about the illustrations and it became kind of a family project. I know nothing about children's literature, but at the Printers Row Lit Fest in September, I made a beautiful, acquaintance of a woman who wrote a spin on Goldilocks and the Three Bears
Mm.
and decided, from her art background to challenge herself to think about the companion illustrations and didn't feel like she should do it, but it exists. It's beautiful. And it is, like you said, kind of 8 by 8, about 30 pages, but kind of stepping into children's literature, it's a leap,
Mhm.
It
into
is.
a brand new genre. And look at you, you're doing it.
It's
Well, and I
great.
actually have another children's story that I've
Oh,
written that I
oh, I didn't
shared,
know.
which I also received great feedback, which
Hmm.
feels good. So that I think I'll
Wow.
probably discuss that later on the podcast, but that's also on the horizon down the
Wow.
road.
Wow, that's
Wow.
great. Well, okay.
Yeah.
My 14-year-old puppy Copper inspired that story.
Oh,
Oh,
yay.
He will
yay.
always be
Copper.
our puppy, even at
Yes.
14
Oh,
years old.
Oh,
of
yeah.
course. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh,
So,
love
I
that.
I love all this. I mean, you just illustrate so well the growth. I mean,
Mm.
that's my word for this podcast.
Yeah.
Is growth
Yeah.
is so you're just showing us how to do it. And
Hmm.
you talked about your 2025 goal to hike some of the Pacific Crest Trail.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of nature and natural beauty in your writing. You talked about ever so gently having a section on nature. Um, can you talk about how nature and writing come together for you?
Well, I have to thank my husband
Mm,
for my strong connection with nature.
mhm,
Because when I met him, he introduced me to camping,
mm.
hiking, backpacking, although I had no interest to put a back on my to put a pack on my back at
Right.
that moment.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, but when our children were born, we took them camping. He introduced us all to the great outdoors. And during the time that I didn't want to backpack,
Yeah.
he started taking the kids backpacking. And he
Mm.
started taking them for weekends.
Mhm.
My son was 5 and my daughter was 8 when he first started taking them up into the Sierra Mountains,
Mm.
Point Reyes National Seashore. So those were great times that the kids had with their father, learning all about birds and bees and bugs and, plants and trees. Um, and during that time, I had my weekend with my girlfriends.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it all worked out. But when I was about 56, I told my husband, I'm ready to put that pack on my back. So
Mm.
he and I started backpacking this. I mean, the kids were older,
Yeah.
and we'd go on weekend trips. I'm not into week-long backpacking trips at my age. Maybe when I was younger. He's gone on. We were a very active scout family, Boy
Mm.
Scouts, Girl
Mhm.
Scouts, and he led 250 milers with
Wow.
my son years ago. But I
Wow.
told him no, a week is too long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've gone to some beautiful places.
Mhm.
I've shared many photos on my blog, and
Yeah.
just being outdoors on a trail, in campsite,
Mhm.
um, swimming in a lake. We both love swimming, and we love the beach, but we love freshwater lakes.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And you know, all that just it provides an abundance of inspiration to write.
Yeah.
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 I think of what what we see in the news nowadays, everything
Mhm.
going on in the world, everything going on in the US. And when I when I am in nature, it just gives me a chance to reflect
Mhm.
Yeah.
and sit in the quiet and rejuvenate my mind,
Mhm.
my heart, my soul.
Yeah.
Nature just provides these gifts that are free to us.
Yeah.
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 So,
Just on a how-to note, do you take notes when you're out there? Will you actually write something down while
oh
you're on the
yes,
trail? Oh, good.
I I bring a journal. Yeah, I
Mm.
bring a journal whenever we go on trips. Normally when I write at home, I'm normally typing on my laptop.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
love to type, but sometimes I'll just sit and write. I do have my journal.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Like for instance, this morning I woke up and I had some thoughts, and I went out to the living room, sat down, and jotted them down in my journal. Now, if I don't have paper nearby, and our cell phones are like another appendage. So
Mhm.
if
Hmm.
I don't have paper, I'll write down thoughts in my notes in my cell phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on the trail, yes, I have my journal and
Yeah. I love what you said about, kind of the being in nature and how it's almost unavoidable. It forces a stillness and a quiet, even when you're moving and, kind of interacting with all the flora and the fauna and everything around you. There is kind of and when and I hear this from, our other writer friends, there's a certain like reverence about being in nature that can be so inspirational and
Mhm.
things come forward that you might never have anticipated. But I love what you and Wynn are saying. The trick is capturing it,
Right,
the feeling in the moment, because you don't know what that might translate into in written form, but it's
right.
beautiful raw material, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Aside from being at home and witnessing sunrises and sunsets, we have
Mhm.
seen some of the most gorgeous sunsets
Mm.
at
Yeah.
the lake that we go to every year up in the Sierra Mountains. And every time I see something like that, it feels like the first time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm in awe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how often you go out, even if it's a walk around the neighborhood.
Hmm.
It's
Mhm.
every time is the first time.
Yeah.
because you're going to see and hear something different.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
and it's
good.
very much when times are stressful, that you mentioned, right? Right now, there's a lot of stress that people are
Mhm.
feeling that you can't really dispense with it in any way. We don't have a lot of agency. We have a certain amount, right, of influence. But I think you have to find ways to hit that reset button to release
Mm.
some of it because we know how caustic and destructive it is to just carry it and carry it. It
Yes.
compounds. So beautiful encouragement here, Lauren. Oh my gosh.
Well, and it goes full circle to what Lauren said about her writing from the beginning, which was a destinations for emotions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's such a great phrase,
Yeah,
right?
it is such a good phrase. So,
Yeah.
Lauren, can you give us a tease about projects and other things you have coming up?
Well, I told you about my children's book. The title is Cora's Quest.
Cora's
Ah,
Quest.
And, you know, in addition to that, I have another children's book idea.
Mhm.
And and then I have more poetry collection ideas, maybe
Mm,
more specific, like
mm-hmm,
a book of syllabic poetry,
mm,
or a book of haibans. I also would love to publish a collection of fiction short stories. So these are all, it's like there's so many ideas in so little time.
mhm.
And, my blog keeps me busy. I
Right?
write to post on my blog,
yeah.
and then trying to keep up and read,
Mhm.
the bloggers that I follow. It's like a full-time job and I'm still working.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
I need to fit in blogging in the morning or at night,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
you know, but
Right?
it's all worth it. It's a great community to be a
Mhm.
part of.
Mhm.
Well, and we have to mention that this is like literally hot off the press. We're recording this right after Halloween, but you wrote a beautiful piece called Treats Only. Or was it Treats Only, Please? Treats Only.
It's only please.
Treats Only, for Spillwords Press. And I think, did you get notified this morning or yesterday? It is, let
Okay.
me pause for emphasis, the publication of the month.
Publication
Wow,
of the month for October. And
beautiful.
thank you. And it's displayed on the sidebar on at Spillwords Press of the
So good.
series tab. I have to
Wonderful.
add that last year in May I was voted author of the month. So
Wow.
I'm really thrilled to
Amazing.
be a part of Spillwords and a part of Gobblers. I'm a monthly contributor for Gobblers as well. So, when you contribute to other online magazines,
Mhm.
it expands your exposure as well as
Mhm.
reading other writers. And
Yeah.
Right. Oh,
And
you
can we
all
ask, Lauren, if you have one piece of advice for other writers about how to take that step into publications like online magazines, what would your top tip be?
I would say go for it. Don't
Mhm.
let fear or self-doubt hold you back. Because honestly, I've dealt with self-doubt and I've dealt with fear. And I
Yeah.
don't think I stand alone in that. I
Mm.
think
Mm-mm.
any or
Yeah.
most writers do,
Yeah.
or anybody in whatever creative art they oh my gosh, I'm
Pursue.
drawing a
Yeah.
blank.
Yeah.
Pursue,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, everybody deals with self-doubt or
Yeah.
fear. But I would say just go for it, because I went for it, and almost 14 years later, I'm enjoying the ride, and things are happening. And
Mhm.
I will say that I'm attending my first writers conference next year,
Mm.
the
Mm-hmm.
San Francisco Writers Conference.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm excited. There's going to
Yeah.
be 500 to
Mhm.
700 attendees, many speakers, authors, publishers, opportunities to network. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh, that's so good. We heard a
So
little
good.
bit about that from our friend Cheryl Aurelia,
Yes.
Mhm.
when she attended last year. And yeah, that what a beautiful thing. We hear that that's a good community building, inspirational step for a lot of writers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yay.
Awesome.
Ironically, she asked me last year if I wanted to, or she asked me in 2023 if I wanted to go with her because geographically,
Yeah.
we're close by, and I
Yeah.
couldn't go at the time.
Oh,
And then when I was thinking about going next year, I
yeah.
asked her if she wanted to go, and she's not able to go. Um, so anyway, I loved reading about her experience, and
Yeah.
I look forward to, to the whole new experience myself.
Wow.
So,
So good.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you
Wow.
so much for taking the time to talk with us.
Yes.
You have so much going on, and we're just thrilled to be able to talk to you and hear about that.
well, thank you so
Absolutely.
much for inviting me to be here with you guys. I truly enjoyed it.
No,
This was
good.
fun.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Lauren.
Okay.